Do you see better outcomes in people who do have a more positive mindset around this kind of stuff?
Love that question. And even though anecdotally, right, anecdotally, when we say that in medicine, it means like, well, what I see. And, a lot of times doctors can sometimes, whatever the case is, mislead because it doesn't matter what they see, it matters what the data shows. Like when you have a high enough volume and, statistical da da da. And even that shows that there's definitely with optimism or like self-image positivity, even prayer, there is a statistical difference in outcome in both quality of life as well as survival based on those versus the people that don't have those. So it's a definite fact.
Hi, I'm Kelley Namiro. Welcome to the Balancing Chaos podcast, a lifestyle podcast where we'll talk about wellness, motherhood, and some really exciting things in between. My goal is to help you develop a lifestyle that promotes health, wholeness, and success. Through my conversations with our experts and guests, I hope to inspire you to live a beautiful, full, and joyful life as you navigate balancing the chaos.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Balancing Chaos podcast. Today, we are honored to have Dr. Sanjay Juneja, the Onc-Doc, on our podcast today. He is not just a triple board-certified hematologist and medical oncologist. He is a digital trailblazer transforming the space of healthcare. With over 500,000 followers, Dr. Juneja educates and empowers. His Target Cancer podcast is an online presence. He is featured on CNBC and empowers so many people with his leading voice on medical innovation. His impact goes beyond the virtual realm, and as he practices, we were just talking about this, in clinical days at Mary Bird Cancer Center, working to bridge healthcare gaps. Get ready for a very insightful conversation as we explore healthcare's digital frontier with Dr. Sanjay Juneja on the Balancing Chaos podcast. Welcome. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. That is quite an intro. I hope it's not going to be a disappointment or underwhelming, but
No,
I'm very passionate about it.
Are you kidding me? This is such an interesting area. And I feel like for so many of the podcasts that I host, we're talking a lot about, not to be like down on it, but a lot about like the, what's the word I'm looking for? Very like fast, like base value, help, like look at health, not looking at like the deeper areas of health, like things like cancer prevention. We're talking about like very
higher level stuff.
Yeah, like weight loss and stuff like that. And I think that this is such an interesting topic because I think that a lot of our listeners don't necessarily think about longevity. We're thinking about the right here and the right now. And so I would love to know, first of all, how did you get into this field and why did you choose this as your area of expertise?
Yeah. Well, before I answer that, I will say you are doing everything. I've listened to your podcast. I'm excited to be here. And the things that you all talk about are very much the best things for longevity. So even though it's right here, right now, as far as like what you're eating and exercising and what you look like to a degree, because confidence and all that the stuff is very important. Those are the things that actually do seem to make a huge difference in the longevity. But well, I'm sure we'll get there in a little bit. The thing that really brought me to oncology, it wasn't like one of those things like, I'm 12 and I'm like, I want to be a cancer doctor. Like that would be very, strange, right? But instead it was that I always wanted to be a teacher. I had a couple of pretty, cool science teachers that like, I was definitely athlete first. I never really thought about the kind of I guess sciencey stuff until some really explained everything. I was like kind of obsessed with physics. And just when you start to understand and appreciate like something as simple as why the leaves change, colors and why there are speed limits around turns, and you learn about the friction, I was just like, this makes the world more interesting. Like everything you just start to appreciate more. That then turned into wanting to become a doctor because I lost my eyesight for a while in a pretty bad car accident. And when people were like, well, weren't you terrified? That you never see, I was like, I wasn't. And was because I was kind of an idiot and just didn't think about how, that it couldn't come back. And I realized it was because my eye doctor really taught me every little thing that was wrong, right? And kind of explained it in a very fundamental way. And so during that kind of like eye loss process and everything, I realized the breakdown of everything was very important. And then, interestingly enough, no offense to any optometrist or ophthalmologist, I went to med school for that, found it really not my thing. I don't want to say boring by any means, but I wanted the whole body. And then I thought, where else does kind of education and making things that are scary less scary because you know what you're doing and why, and what's ahead of you, like where else does that matter more than cancer? And then that's what kind of evolved this whole doctor and cancer thing, because the doctor's a teacher, right? And so I got to teach about something that seemed really scary, and I got to see, and I see now, 7 years into this, just ridiculous growth and confidence and beauty and living despite a stage 4 diagnosis or not stage 4 or whatever. And I think the key factor in that is really breaking it down and making it something that's like relatable, understandable, and just know what you're in for. That's what people want. It's like, I just want to know what's up. Like, if the darker it is, the scarier it is to walk around a room or a cave,
Yeah. 100%. I love that you say that. And that what you even said at the beginning, when I was saying that we talk about more surface level things, it's like, it is true, kind of true, because I do believe so much in mindset. It's like when you feel empowered and you feel safe and you feel confident, it makes managing any situation, even cancer, probably better off. And so I guess the first real question I'll lead in with is do you see better outcomes in people who do have a more positive mindset around this kind of stuff?
Love that question. And even though anecdotally, when we say that in medicine, it means what I see. And, a lot of times doctors can sometimes, whatever the case is, mislead, because it doesn't matter what they see. It matters what the data shows. Like when you have a high enough volume and, statistical and even that shows that there's definitely, with optimism or self-image, positivity, even prayer, there is a statistical difference in outcome in both quality of life as well as survival based on those versus the people that don't have those. So it's a definite fact. But to answer your question, yes. I mean, I will have a timid kind of backwoods, I say that because I live in Louisiana, right? That's quiet and meek, and she's, older. And then within, 6 weeks, she's coming in there, high-fiving my team and just acting and nothing changed, right? She's technically incurable. Of course, people can live years now with incurable cancer and not look like they're getting any treatment, depending on what the cancer is. But it's nothing changed about the diagnosis. But after those couple of weeks of just, revisiting, talking, kind of clearing the lens or the window to be able to see outside clearly, everything changes. Because if you really think about it, why are we not all in an existential crisis all the time? Because you could really just sit down and be like, dude, I'm gonna die. This world's gonna keep spinning. Everything's gonna be going on the same. People are gonna be podcasting, and I'm dead for eternity. And then when you start doing that, you start getting anxious, right? And then it's and even that's even more difficult, because in that case, there's nothing really you can turn around. With cancer, it's I can celebrate the mini victories, and that's what you do in life about your mortality. It's did I have someone I loved, or did I have someone that was successful in my career? Whatever your metric is for just heck yeah, I did something with my time. That doesn't not apply to somebody battling cancer. And especially now when people are just living so much longer, and it's not all chemo, and there's all kinds of stuff that's really more conducive to quality of life. It's just what did you do this time? And you I have a lot of my survivors tell me on my podcast and whatever, they're and I just feel it's the victories feel even sweeter, because now even though we all know we're finite, for some reason, knowing it a little more clearly, they live very vibrantly. And that's why I do cancer. It's because it's humbling. It's nothing but humbling, because I just see it every day. And I'm just I couldn't imagine being this strong, but it really makes me encouraged about what we have kind of inherently at our core as human beings. Right. It's a beautiful thing.
I can only imagine how fulfilling doing that kind of work would be every single day. Getting to see those people who come in, like you said, scared, timid, meek, and you're I not only did I change this person's life with respect to their health, I also changed your perspective on how they're seeing this, and getting to see that through is just such an incredible thing. So it's I have to say, the work that you're doing, it's really, really amazing. Just incredible.
I mean, I don't think it's a me, right? I think that's all of our responsibility as physicians, and it's just a weird time in health and medicine. But I definitely don't. I very much appreciate you say that, but it's more just it's a privilege to be able to be in a position to be able to even make this experience a little, less bad, I guess. And And I don't think it's anything that is great. I think patients deserve that. They deserve to like hear, to know, to have someone that like celebrates the victories with you, gets choked up when they have bad news, but then is able to reorient you hopefully on what the next goal is. Like everyone deserves that. And not everyone gets that, because there's a lot more cancer, a lot more diagnoses, and not nearly enough oncologists. It takes 15, 14 years straight if you don't skip a beat. So that's the reason the social media is like I hope at least some people can be like, oh, now I get it. Now I get why I'm not getting the cancer cut out when they said it's curative, and why are they letting it in me? All right. That's like distressing. On social media, people will be like, I'm like just torn up. They're telling me that like I have a curable cancer that is stage 2 or 3 and I'm not getting it cut out. Why not? And then you find out. And then you're like, survivals are better because there's such a high success rate of it shrinking down with this therapy because it has this feature. And then you're like, whoa, yeah, well, definitely. If I have a less chance of a recurrence and I have an 85, 90% chance of responding to this therapy before my surgery, and then you take it out and it's like super tiny, then like now all of a sudden it's 2 different things. It's anxiety for 3 months about like, why am I getting treatment and not getting it cut out, cancer that's curable, versus, ooh, I really want to get it smaller. And all that change was the explanation.
Do you feel like there's a gap there with what you're talking about with the explanation with other doctors, where a lot of people aren't necessarily getting that explanation on the forefront, and that's why they're walking around with all of this anxiety, right? Like, why am I not getting answers? I know I have a client, for example, and this is really interesting. She actually just went through a breast cancer diagnosis. And somebody didn't get back to her about what they were supposed to do for like 3 weeks. And it was just like, and I'm sure people go months. Like, I have no idea. I've never been in that space, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts as to if there is a gap, and if there is, why is there a gap?
Yeah. I mean, it's just, there's a huge deficit of oncologists in community America, which is like 85% of Americans. Like and so when people hear that, they're like, what does that mean? That just sounds like a White House statement. Like, what it means is 15% of the population in this country goes to a MD Anderson, Memorial Sloan, Duke, like they have a major institution or university, versus 85%, which is like you go to a private clinic or you go to a hospital that's not an academic center that has every specialty. And that 85%, I mean, we all have patients that are waiting weeks to just get to see us, right? Like there's not enough. You just can't find an oncologist. Like every day I get emails and texts and like join, like desperate locums tenens in Latin, which means just come here temporarily, because nobody, either if the oncologist died or they moved or they had a child, there is no one there to be able to give the treatment. So like every extra minute you spend, it's either as a doctor, less with your kids, less with your family, less with everything else, or you're going to end up pushing back. Like if I wanted to spend 30 minutes with every patient, so every follow-up is 15 minutes in general in oncology in the country, for the most part. If you make it 30, now you've delayed the people that are 3 weeks waiting 6 weeks. So it's like, it's just drinking from this fire hose. And it's a very problematic system that I think people are trying to solve for multiple reasons. It just takes.
But that's why your Instagram is so great, because you're giving out information.
That's my hope. It's like, it's evergreen.
Right? And like giving out hope to people for free.
Right. It's evergreen stuff. And that's why I tell a lot of doctors, I'm like, if you're saying the same thing over and over and over again, like, why don't we live in a world where it's just like, hey, these are all the things I'm going to tell you about myeloma, or like, whatever, like brain cancer or chemo, review it all. And then when you come and it's me and it's like, I'm still like this animated. Then when you come, then we can talk about you specifically, rather than using up 90% of the time just to teach you. And now it's like, oh, time's up. But what about, how does it, oh, next time. And it's like, we should just be like having all that stuff evergreen to some capacities, no matter what our specialty. And then you review it, you learn it, it's all the edifying stuff. And then you're already packed in with your questions. You're like, give me the applicability for my scans specifically. I think it's crazy. We have the tech that we do, and we're just still doing this kind of rote, exhaustion of quality time. I don't know, more out of stubbornness and convention than anything else, if I have to guess, just because of how the reception is sometimes about posting education on social media.
Yeah. And I think that like cancer specifically is it's a topic that needs to be educated on, but then like anxiety around it, where people are like, oh, I don't want to hear about this because I would rather put my head in the sand than even think about it. And so it's like this vicious cycle of not necessarily getting the information that everybody should have. So let's talk about like just generally, what's the most common type of cancer out there?
So if you're talking like most common, because obviously males and females are both humans, you have like colorectal, right? Because we all got a colon and a rectum, hopefully. And then, so that's going to be like, your highest. And then when you're looking at colorectal and lung is especially worldwide is the most common. So lung and then colorectal are the two that are the most common. And then if you're looking at women, it's obviously breast. And if you're looking at men, it's prostate. Everyone fears like the pancreatic cancers and kind of these scary ones, but it's breast, prostate, and then colorectal and lung between, where gender or sex or any of those terms don't matter as far as the organs that you're born with. Is going to be generally the more common ones.
Okay. And when it comes to like prevention for these types of things, what age should we all start going, like, not even just like, we know, like, go get a mammogram when you turn 40 or whatever, but like, what age should we be doing like whole health type of scans to try to look for this kind of stuff? My husband and I actually went and did this really cool thing. The first time I went, I got so much anxiety because I get claustrophobia. I didn't want to be like put in the actual machine to get scanned. But I went back and I was like, you know what? I have to get over this because I just want to do this as like a preventative measure for my health. Every 2 years, what was it called?
The total body MRI.
It was like a total body MRI. There's a name for it. Now I'm forgetting the name of it.
The one that like Kim Kardashian mentioned.
Yes. On that show. Yes. I think that was what we did. We went and did it in LA. Exactly. And they say like, come do this every 2 years, but like, should people be doing that kind of stuff? Or like, what should people be doing? Should people be looking at blood count? Like, what are the ways that we can be looking at our health as a preventative way to, hopefully live longer?
Yeah. So I guess technically with what you're talking about, it's not necessarily, it kind of is preventative, but it's like, those are diagnostic, right? When you're getting an image, it's like, you're not going to see anything unless there is a cancer or pre-cancer. Exactly. So the same thing that I said earlier about like the data-driven stuff, it's like, these things have to show that there's a survival benefit. And then obviously, then it's like the cost thing, all this stuff, because ideally, right, like we would all get, I say ideally, but if there's a benefit, it's going to benefit you more to get a monthly mammogram, than every 2 years. Like There's no frequency that like you're trying to catch it as early as possible. That's the key to curing any cancer. Is like, remember, cancer was your normal cell. It was like a normal cell that was in your body. All of our cells like live and die, but eventually it just starts to go unregulated. It goes rogue, and it's like, forget all this. I'm not listening to the rules, and it just starts growing. And so if you can just cut out that colony, like that's why you get a lumpectomy. You're like, it's just right here. It's like it's 1 centimeter, and all the other tissue looks like it's behaving. Cut it out, cut out a bunch of good tissue around it, and hopefully the stuff that was incurred and those mutations and everything are just gone. That's the best way. And so what you're doing with that scan, and it's a pretty fancy scan, is you're trying to find something early. But remember, if you don't have it, like cancer, it's just going to be negative. So it's like, well, why every 2 years? Why not every year? Why not every 6 months? It's just like, where do you draw the line, right? And so in an ideal world, if there was no side effects, no cost, sure. It's like we used to have tanning beds. Not me, I'm brown Indian, if you're not watching video, but like a lot of people have tanning beds in their houses all the time. And imagine if you had that. So I guess to answer your question, the way that it's productive is what you're asking. So I just wanted to say that in case somebody else was listening.
Oh, that's super helpful.
Yeah, is if you have any kind of insurance, there are things that are just covered, that are just paid for because they show a statistical seemingly benefit on survival. And that's your mammograms, like you said. All of the things can be earlier. If you have a family history of a primary, family member, parent, sister, whatever, then you talk to your doctor to see if I need it earlier. You do that mammogram, you do the colonoscopies, right? There's a little debate, but people are saying 45. Why? Because you're getting a scope to look through your entire pipe from your mouth to your butthole. Yeah. And if you have these things have lead times, like they look a little sketchy before they turn into cancer most of the time. So you snip that out before it turns into cancer. Yeah. Same thing with pap smears. Like people should not be getting cervical cancer for the most part in the first world country, because like when they swab it, and I got to get a cone, I got to get like a peep and all this stuff, it's because something sketchy. That's a sketchy colony. That's why like an HPV is like 90% of it. That's why people say get the vaccine, because then you can't get the HPV vaccine that causes cancer and head and neck cancer. It's the same concept. So mammograms, colorectal, colonoscopies, skin exams is one of those sketchy, prostate, and the one that everyone forgets about. If you listen to this, and I doubt this will be you just based on your amazing hosts from all the content that I've watched before, but if you smoke, or if your parents smoke, or someone that smoked for over 25 years, a pack a day, or 2 packs a day for 13 years, just 25 pack years, and they're over 50, every year they should get an annual CT lung cancer screen, low dose. It's covered. All the things I'm talking about right now are covered.
No, but I'm so glad that you said that, because you're like that. I don't think that sounds like you, and it's not me. I mean, obviously, but my grandpa actually died of lung cancer, and one of our really good family friends just found out that they have lung cancer, and so it's like, yes, like go get checked, like go look.
And it's covered to be screened in this setting, so it's like, because it saves 1 out of 4 people like from dying.
Wow.
And you know how much is ordered? Guess what percentage of the time that it should be ordered, it is ordered by a doctor in this country? 8%. 92% of the people that qualify for it don't have it ordered for whatever reason. Everything else, 80%, 90% compliance. But I don't know if it's because there's bias, if they don't know, it's been around for 10, 12 years, but that's a big one. So that's all covered stuff. And then to your question, you can do these total body, if you're just sure or just really don't feel right, you lose your appetite. That's a big one. Losing weight is one thing, but if you're really hungry, it's a little reassuring. If you just don't have an appetite for like weeks to months, they say like that's kind of, and you're losing weight, that's sketchy, right?
Yeah.
Or just concerning. And then there's also this test you can buy. I think Grail and there's a couple of companies out there. It costs about $900, and it's a liquid biopsy. So if you have cancer cells, all the cells like die, and as new ones are made, and it checks the DNA, and that's the one that everyone says you can get a cancer detection test. That's what they're talking about. It's called a circulating tumor DNA test. But again, if you get it, it's not like, oh, I'm
you can
good.
do that at home.
Yeah, well, you need to get it. The ones that are you can talk to a primary doctor, but they're starting to come out with them at home. But again, when you get it, it's not like, oh yeah, heck yeah, I'm good, I can keep drinking or whatever, because it doesn't say anything about 6 months from now or 12 months from now. And that's the trick. It's like, it's just an error. It's just an undetected error that your immune system didn't take care of. We've all beat cancer every day. If you're listening to this, you've beat cancer. You beat cancer, Kelley. I beat cancer. 10,000 mutations a day. Our immune system, we're just a bunch of ingrates. They take care of this crap all the time. It's when a cancer is able to escape the immune system, like either put on a Harry Potter invisible cloak or, whatever the mechanism, that's when now cancers have this like ability to start getting mutagenic and pathologic and all those scary terms.
Okay. So now that we've kind of gone there, and like you mentioned smoking and like you mentioned drinking, like, because I think there are a lot of behaviors that a lot of us think that we can get away with, right? I know for me, like the one that I am constantly, because we hear it all the time now, that like stress is a big thing that like ends up leading to cancer. And that's the one thing that I'm constantly trying. So let me rewind this for a second. I love that I get to talk to you, because cancer for me is one of those things that I used to just have this like unnecessary fear around. I think that it's because so many people in my family have had it. It might be trauma, whatever it is. And so yeah. I remember in my 20s, I would call my mom back when I was in my MBA in New York. And I'd be like, do you think I have colon cancer? And she'd be like, Kelley, you're crazy. Like, why do you think that? And so even to this day, I'll have like these like little weird anxious thoughts, and I'll be like, oh, like, is my stress potentially contributing to this? So I'm wondering, are there certain lifestyle type habits, like I just mentioned, drinking, smoking, stress, that like you could rattle off, that people can be aware of to know that like these statistically contribute to your likelihood of cancer?
Yes. Well, I mean, so I'm going to say this, I don't want anyone to freak out, right? But first of all, just say your freakouts are totally normal. As everybody's, myself, like it's normal. It just happens because they say we have this thing called like a neurocognitive shield, that we're almost like primed through evolution or whatever you want to believe to just not be aware of our mortality. And every now and then it breaks. Now, do you get more stressed and think about these things more when you're stressed? Yes, but we're in mostly naive, like intentioned or subconscious disbelief about our mortality. So every now and then that breaks, and it's oftentimes with high IQ people and everything. So that's normal. Let me just say that. Now, everything I say is, again, data. It just shows that there's an increased risk, like, and to varying degrees, but it's pretty significant compared to its counterpart. As I say that, alcohol, for example, right? Like, I live in the South, and so like I'll drink every now and then. We do that socially. Like, it's like I used to have a nightcap, almost every night, like back in residency. And ever since I found the data, I don't do that as much anymore. I do it when my friends are over. So it's modifiable, but there's no question that alcohol of any degree increases your chance of cancer, several types. But but there's plenty of like people in Napa and Sonoma, from what I hear. I wish one day I can get out there and experience all that. But they live to 100, right? Centurions. There's centurions there. There are people in their 90s. So it's like, that's the anecdotal part. So it's never that easy, but alcohol for sure, like, causes to any degree. So maybe that's a modifying agent for you. The next one, and this is without question, and I wish it wasn't the case, but obesity definitely has to do with it. Like, it just does. And I hate that. I like had, trouble. Sometimes I'm obese by the BMI scale, which thank goodness they're finally doing away with. But I think it's more the hyperinsulinemia, potentially. That's what people are saying. Is it really
going to say insulin resistance? Yeah.
Yes. Like, is it actually the obesity, or is it if you're super healthy and obese? I just don't know or personally believe that that's the same risk as somebody that may be pre-diabetic or diabetes in the same weight, right? If somebody's like swimming all the time but just loves food, but the other person is never doing anything physical and has a lot of fast food where they get these high spikes, insulin is a growth factor. Cancer is unregulated cell growth in Latin. So if you're constantly pumping out insulin, you didn't get resistant. You just have such high levels, it's not working. You have growth factor continuing to circulate because it has to, because of these crazy spikes on fast food. And don't get me wrong, like, I still like Taco Bell and McDonald's. It's my point. My point is, I moderate these things, knowing these things, but they make a difference. And processed meats seem to be kind of problematic too. Bladder cancer, blah blah.
Okay.
But that's it. Alcohol, obesity, like the high spikes of the sugars and processed foods, and then, like you said, sleep. Like, the way I like to distill it down to make it understandable or easy is your stress hormones on a physiologic level. Forget emotions for a second.
Yeah.
If you don't sleep well, if you have sleep apnea and you're never actually getting to deep REM, good restorative sleep, like, increased chance of stroke, heart attack, like erectile dysfunction, decreased testosterone, hormone imbalance, like depression, libido decrease. All of that stuff happens because of sleep apnea. Number one, it doesn't like get you in that deep REM, but the cortisol, all those extra physiologic stress hormones are up. Where do you have a 365 days in a year? Where do you have a 25% increase compared to the average of all the other days in death of any kind and accidents? Guess one day in the year.
New Year's Day.
Close. That's fair, because we're not sleeping as much, right?
Yeah.
But it's actually when you spring back on daylight savings time.
Oh, okay.
In the country, there's an increase of like 20 to 25% of everything being screwed up because of death and stroke and heart attacks and everything, because of that 1 hour loss of sleep. Versus spring forward, or what I say fall back, spring forward, 25% less incidence of all these things just on that one day compared to average. So that in itself tells you stress and sleep are humongous. I'm talking about heart attack, strokes, and everything for that.
Right.
So then you take emotional stress on top of that, and alcohol causes stress. Stopping drinking alcohol, if you drink a lot, causes stress. Yes, they all decrease your immune system, the kind of integrity or the hardiness of it. And what did we say before? The immune system is key to fighting cancer. That's why we all beat pre-cancers and cancers. So you want to protect it. Don't freak out if you have sleepless nights and you're dancing. All that's fine. It's the point of, like, over months and years.
Yeah.
Because when you restore it, it could still take care of that cancer that was trying, or pre-cancer that was trying to get screwed up. But it's the fact that it's over years, uncontrolled sleep apnea, constant emotional stress, alcoholism, that's where you get into trouble.
I really hope that you are enjoying this episode. I want to take a quick pause and invite you to come deeper with us if you're ready to explore the root cause connection to the symptoms that you're feeling. Whether you're bloated, exhausted, maybe you have brain fog, you can't lose weight, the WBK Health and Hormones course and our WBK membership and app are here to help you feel like you are empowered to take charge of your health and understand the real why behind you feeling how you do. And we give you the methods and protocols to heal with sustainable solutions. Right now, through Labor Day, get 10% off our annual membership on the WBK app with the code Balancing Chaos, all one word, BALANCINGCHAOS, and 20% off the Wellness by Kelley Health and Hormones course, and an emailed lab review with the code Balancing Chaos 20. That's BALANCINGCHAOS 20. These protocols in the course have meal suggestions, journal prompts, and supplement guides to help you heal whatever area of hormonal balance you're struggling with. With our membership, you'll receive a library of content and new workouts, recipes, and meditations every single week to keep you consistent and to allow your body to come back to its most vital state of being. Okay, now back to the episode.
2 questions. First, when we think about like heart disease, I think heart disease is the number 1 cause of death, if I'm not incorrect. Is that right?
In certain age group, yeah.
Yeah. So like, for some reason, I think that
they're all related.
is
right?
more what?
They're all related. Oh, so far.
Yeah. I was gonna say they are definitely all related, but I was gonna say with the cancer is more anxiety inducing to some degree or another, because it's like it's building up for an extended period of time and you don't necessarily know it. Where heart disease might be doing that too, but it's like I just feel like people are maybe more aware of like those habits or like how that like kind of looks within the body. Whereas like somebody who's like perfectly normal, and perfectly healthy looking on the outside could be walking around with cancer and not have any idea about it. And so go ahead.
True, but it's very unlikely. So like, I don't want somebody hearing this and getting scared, but you're right. I mean, I have people in their 20s and 30s and 40s all the time. I just, because I'm thinking of myself as a viewer, right? Listening to this, like, again, if your appetite's good, you're probably good. Like if you're, if you get your annual labs, like probably good. There's like little things that are off. Ask your doctor, why is this off? They're like, oh, it's fine. No, tell me, why is it off then? Why is it off? Tell me why it's off. Like it's like, that's fine to explain, to ask for that. But you're right. Like cancer is not like necessarily a flipped switch. A lot of the cancers are a process that are coming. Like it's like a 7 to 9% chance because some area on your pap smear, right? Like if you haven't gotten a pap smear on your cervix and you just don't know about it and you're just letting that little soil kind of fertilize. Same with the colon. And so the people that are doing all the right things, it's just less likely. Like exercising, this just came out. 4 minutes, we're talking 4 minutes, bro, of strenuous. I just had to do the bro thing because it's so blunt. Of strenuous like activity to where your heart rate is getting up to 150. So you're doing like what's considered vigorous exercise.
Right.
4 minutes compared to people that don't, right? And I haven't in a long time because I'm put too much on my plate and I know that's an excuse, but whatever. That reduces your chance of having cancer by 18 to 30%.
Anytime?
Pretty much. I mean, just all-time chance of a type of cancer if you did vigorous activity for 4 minutes.
Wow.
So when I used to do like personal training stuff, it's not to be like, look, I'm less keen on you busting butt and just like working really hard for 2 or 3 days for an hour. I'm like, I would rather you run up these stairs for like 10 minutes, like 5 times a day. Like it's that kind of constant challenge on your body to rev up the immune system, to get that exercise out, to kind of, get the edema out, all that stuff that happens. Everything in life, including cancer and heart disease and everything, is about the regularity of it. It's the stretches, it's the mile, it's the marathon, not the sprint, right? Same thing. Don't freak out about the stress things. Like if you're physiologically stressed, oh my gosh, my chance of cancer. No. If you're chill the next year, great. It's just how do most days of the week and how do most months of your year and then through your lifetime look? And overall, if you're like healthy and like working hard and trying to limit all this stuff, you're in a much different boat than somebody that's just like grossly negligent of that for 5 or 10 years. And I'm not critical. Like I get it because like, I get it. But if you're negligent for 10 years, you're in a whole different risk boat for this heart disease and cancer and everything. Imagine just fast food every day because it's easy and you're not working out. That's a whole different thing.
Right. And that's why I even mentioned at the beginning, thinking to myself, like, I'm constantly working on stress, because if I look at my life, like as a whole, it's like, I would say that I'm more stressed than I'm not. And so like, that's why I'm constantly looking at that. And so my question was going to be like, around over the last few, let's say, decades, how much of an increase have we seen in this specific disease? Like, has it come up so much compared to something like heart disease, or have they stayed in about the same ranking order?
No, it's definitely come up. And that's why I do like to call it, like, so I'm working on a book and it's called It's Time to Cancel the Term A Cure for Cancer. And it has like a strike through. And it's not that we're not going to cure, we're curing it already. Like testicular, it can spread everywhere and it's still stage 3 just because it's so curable, 95% of the time. But the point is, like, they're all different diseases, right? So I just want to like kind of highlight that, because if you have a cancer diagnosis of someone and you talk to someone else, you'll see inconsistencies. So my point in saying that is just get the biopsy, listen to your doctor, don't get guidance until you know what kind of cancer you have. That's number one. Number two, to answer your question, all the cancers, like you said, just the disease of cancer itself, yes, more and younger. There was a big article that came out like a week or two ago, and it's just like, why the F is not what it actually said. Are cancers like younger, and especially colorectal and stuff, and more frequent? Like it's like 30s now and 40s, like for, with colorectal we're seeing, and liver and pancreatic. And I know there's this big thing about this. Oh, we're more stressed generation. Sure, I think there's part of it. But the one thing, and this is my bias, it's just, it is the way, this probably not the people listening to your podcast. And that's why I believe in education so much, because I think my people in Louisiana just don't know better. But it's the way we eat. Like, it is so unbelievably convenient and affordable to get something that over thousands of years our tongue has evolved and made sure that we survive to like, right? If your tongue, if you didn't have the mutations to like sweets and fats and all that stuff, your nomadic people, when they were just traveling around trying to kill a boar and eat and, stumble across fruit, if they didn't like it, they didn't hold on to the calories and they died before the next food. So it's like we adapted to love this stuff. So I don't like sometimes medical communities critical of like, well, do better. It's like, bro, we evolved this way. And now you can actually get the burger through your window. It's just short of putting it in your mouth. It's that easy. And our ancestors would just be dancing for weeks if they tasted a meal like that. So it's hard. So anyone listening to this, it's hard. But when you do that, the same thing applies. Our bodies are not equipped to get these kind of incredibly high spikes of stuff all the time. Like, it's just like, it's haywire. It's calamity. And what causes cancer and what's good, grounds and fertilizers for cancer? Calamity. So when you're pumping these insulins and you're getting these spikes and you're staying up, like, those are the things that I think are really like making this big difference. I mean, childhood obesity is up to near 20 to 25% in childhood. It's so sad. It's like you don't even have a chance. It's like you don't know better at that stage. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, you don't have the tools. And then you end up, like you just said, like, it becomes, one, we've evolved to it, but two, it becomes like, it's so multifaceted. One, it's emotional, where like people eat stuff for emotional comfort. Two, it's like that's what your taste buds are wired and addicted to, because they actually have things like food scientists out there who are like, their dedicated job is to keep you coming back to these processed, like, refined foods. And so it's very multifaceted and so hard to break the pattern. So let's switch gears and come at this from a little bit more of a positive angle for a second. If we're talking like prevention, and like somebody who is going to have a diet that is anti-cancer, cancer prevention, and I'm not saying that anyone is going to be perfect. I'm by no means perfect, but like, what does that look like? Are we eating high protein? Are we eating lots of vegetables? Are we eating, what are we eating? What does that look like?
So I'll start by saying the ones that really wreck me patient-wise, that's just hard for me, because I know how hard it is for them, are my like almost like yogi, like just granola, 8 herbal supplements, everything organic, everything, and then they got cancer. And I think they never, like, it's the hardest for them to ever, especially if it's stage 4, like even if it's years, I just know it just destroyed them because like I did everything. So there's nothing that makes you like spared, but at the same time, it can definitely help. That's number one. And number two, like, family history only matters 10%. Like 90% of the cancers that we see in adulthood have nothing to do with your inherited genetics. They have to do with the genetics of a tumor that evolved in your lifetime. So what do you want to do? You want to make sure your cells are taken care of to reduce the chance of those mutations. We talked about smoking, alcohol.
I love that you said that, because I think so many people out there, and don't get me wrong, like I see the people who, like, I understand why you might want to blame genetics, but like people blame genetics for so many things, not just cancer, like whether it's obesity or like what, like, yes, you have the genetics, but your lifestyle is pulling the trigger. And so you have control of a lot of stuff. And not to say like it's anyone's fault for getting cancer.
Right.
That's not what I'm saying.
No, I know. But yeah, that one seems still more randomness than anything. But obesity, there are, you're right. It's everything. Everything we keep saying is balanced moderation. Like there is some genetic component for sure. Like usually it's modifiable. There's one, cancer genetic thing that's terrible. You have a 95% chance of cancer. It's called leaf-remaining. If you have a TP53, that's your policeman or woman. If that's out, it's like 50% chance of breast cancer a year for a woman. So like I had a patient like that. So there are those, but we know that 90% have normal inherited genetics. Same thing to your point. It's hard. And for a second, I'm going to just say this. That's why when you hear precision medicine, that's where we're headed, is because all these rules, take metformin at this dose, take whatever, we're not even looking at what your genetic, inherited genetics and profile are when we do that. It's crazy. It's like an archaic science. But we have the means to know exactly how you metabolize things, what your vitamin B12 level should be, what your vitamin D, like D and all this. We just go in these random ranges from like the 70s. It's nuts. So when you hear that, the precision medicine, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But to answer your, I'm so sorry, I just keep tangents.
That's where we're going to go next. So I love it. So diet, and then we're going to talk about medicine.
You want to eat definitely like here's the key, and this is one of the theories and why in America maybe we're seeing more cancer, is we've gotten so narrow with our diets. Like, oh, gross, I don't eat that. It's like, oh, it's from where? I haven't heard that country, gross. Like, you can't not have that attitude, because the way that if you believe at all about gut microbiome, this is why I'm not going to let you, have your candy and eat it too, or whatever the phrase is, cake, whatever, is that if you believe in microbiome and like, I know my gut and all that stuff is really important, the way your gut is that athlete, that running back that can kind of go left and right and does ballet, so they have all their support structures and doesn't just lift all day and do the same, large muscle group workouts where they're going to get hurt. The way you make your microbiome a very like comprehensive athlete is to give it multiple things to learn and experience. So now it's like I was like doing a keynote at a medical school in Brazil, and I went to the buffet and I was like, ooh, like I just want to eat all the stuff I recognize. I made sure to eat nothing that I recognized, like every vegetable, every nut, everything, because the more you almost insult, like not insult, but challenge your stomach, the more robust your immune system gets, the more like adept it gets. You get less autoimmune disease. But if you get narrow, and you're like, oh, I don't eat those vegetables, or I don't eat those fruits, it's green, like, or whatever, like avocado is weird. Like it's just making you narrow. And now when you experience viruses and when you experience other bacteria and pathogens that are trying to come in and cancers, it's like, they're just not a very adept, like set of immune cells. And so you have to eat the nuts, the granolas, like if you're not allergic, all the different kind of vegetables. Vegetables are huge because they're antioxidants and stuff like that. Fruits, yes, not necessarily. I don't know of any data that says high protein is necessarily anti-cancer by any means. But the cruciferous stuff is definitely big. Turmeric. I don't eat Indian food. Well, there's a lot of turmeric, which has a lot of suggestion that it's anti-cancer and anti-inflammatory. So that's the key. Ton of vegetables, ton of fruits. Make it like heterogeneous and just kind of like really just versatile diet if you can. I think intermittent fasting, in my opinion, from what I've read, helps because it helps glucose regulation and insulin, like regulation, like we talked about. So even if it's a 16-hour window, if it's a 2 or 3 day, if you can do it healthfully, It just seems, again, that dexterity. Everything is about dexterity. That ballet, that athlete, I just think of an athlete in ballet. It's like they're learning these things that they're not typically doing. Why? To stabilize their lateral malleoli and their knees. I mean, they're learning to be able to turn on a dime as a running back because of all that. And that's the key.
Yes. Yes. I love that you bring it, like we've talked about it through this entire podcast, but that you bring it back to like even blood sugar. Like I talk about this like all the time, almost every single day on Instagram. And people are like, well, how is that affecting my hormones? And like, it affects literally everything, to all the way from your estrogen balance to all the way down to cancer. Like it affects everything. And so if you can be more metabolically flexible, like you're talking about, it is going to like behoove your health in ways that you like can't even recognize. And so I love
everything's a cascade. Everything,
yes.
like we're in grades. If you Google glucose pathways, insulin, glucagon, you're going to see like biochemical stuff where you see all the different hormones and peptides that happen just based on what your sugar is at a moment. Like we don't even think about that, but it's like, it's not just the sugar, bro. It's like, it's everything that goes around it. It's like a ripple effect about everything all the time, every second in your body. And so, yes, they have consequences. Yes, where you make your hormones comes from your, what's called your, adrenal and cortical, and then like anterior pituitary. All that stuff's dynamically doing this every second for everything that like you do when you stress and everything. It's a very delicate system, which is why I use caution about, a bunch of bros that just want to start testosterone because it was low. I'm like, dude, there is a huge cascade of things upward, downward, and sideways upstream that change when you're just introducing something that you're just claiming your body can't do. It's like it is never a linear like one-to-one thing. It's like there's a whole bunch of people, like the Model T workflow thing, how they made that's why they were able to produce. They had people doing different things. That's the case for all the hormones in your body. And that's why the balance, the dexterity, all of that stuff is just continuously important. You just can't pop a pill because it's going to mess up something in your axis was awry, and there's a whole bunch of other things that are still awry in your axis. You can't just interject it. It's almost irreverent to think you can just do one thing and that everything else will like fall into place. Like the human body is just far more,
complex than that,
revereable than that.
Yes, 100%. It's why like when I volunteered for a cancer clinic for years for children with cancer, and like the big thing that they had when I was working there was like one of the things that we were doing was like roles we were fulfilling was snacks and like food for the families and the kids who were there getting treatment. And at the time they were doing like McDonald's and cookies, and like that's what they wanted to use the funds for. I'm like, if we're donating this money, like we're using it for real whole food, because this is also going to impact like the potential success of at least that was my belief at the time. And I didn't have all the knowledge.
You were ahead of your times. You're ahead of your time, because we didn't, I mean, even when I was taught mostly like, when I was in training, it doesn't matter. You just get the calories on, like, and a lot of doctors still say that. And we're just learning. Hold up. Like, it's not necessarily it's not necessarily inconsequential, like about even during your cancer. Like at the very beginning, if you're 80 pounds, just get the calories just so you can live through your treatment. But it really does seem like, and there's a lot of studies finally going on. So you were way ahead of it. You're right.
And can you just connect that really quickly before we talk about, I want to talk about like advancements in your podcast and precision medicine. But can you connect that, how like blood sugar is related to inflammation and inflammation is then related to cancer? Can you connect that dots really quick?
So basically, when you're getting your A1C, it sounds kind of gross when you think of it this way, but it helps. An A1C, you're looking at the red blood cell as if it's an M&M. And then you're checking to see how much sugar is on the coating of that M&M. That is your percentage. And that's why it's a 3-month calculation. It's because the red blood cell, needless to say, is circulating in your blood vessels. So if your sugars are 200, whatever, 180, then that thing is pretty fucking sweet. Excuse my language. So it's like, the A1C is like 8.5. And it's like, that's bad. It's like, it's not like, oh, I had orange juice this morning. I'm like, bro, this is 3 months worth of sugar coating, literally. So, and then what happens? Then that stuff is like sticky, like actually literally. That's why you see like with like diabetics, the arteries start getting clogged, just like that red blood cell that has that sugar, and which is inflammatory, which brings in other platelets and other clotting stuff. That's what's happening to your blood vessels. It's like It's like you haven't changed your oil in a car long enough. What happens? That grit and stuff just starts settling in that engine. And that's why, like, any American dad, and you got to change your oil every whatever, because you can't undo it out of the collection system of the engine. And so then what happens? Then when you're having this kind of like grit and this, that, and the other, it's inflammatory because it shouldn't be at that level. And now that goes to the point we were making earlier. It's like we're just not used to having this much sugar. Our bodies aren't, all those adaptations and cascades and that flow we were talking about is not used to having an A1C of 8.5 and all the blood vessels. That's why there's this dementia now and these strokes now and renal disease, because they're just getting clogged. It's like you need synthetic in your engine, but we're still using crude oil because like it, I guess it's a difficult analogy, but it's the same thing. It's like we're just not used to like being able to take care of that because we never had those spikes before. And then the inflammation that comes from all that stickiness and sugariness and all that stuff, that down regulates your immune system from doing what it's supposed to do. Because it's like, in a simple way, it's getting distracted. It's like, and that's not necessarily the case, but the immune cells are all different. And the ones that are taking care of that actually repel the good ones, the lymphocytes that just are the kind of bishops of the chess table that just say, ooh, this is bad, this is bad. You just have a whole bunch of pawns and you don't have the bishops and the queens and the ones that really should be taking care of the bigger picture stuff.
Okay. That's super, super helpful. So now that our audience knows, now you guys like just take that with you and the next meal you go into, knowing that like you can make these choices that are going to help you. And again, it's not like all or nothing. This is not just saying like that diet is everything, but like it plays a role, right? And
it definitely plays a role. And my biggest podcast that I had the biggest readership are with Dr. Jason Fung, who wrote the obesity code and the diabetes code, and Thomas Seyfried. And both of them are just huge on that. They're like, Thomas Seyfried believes, this is what he believes, that like really bringing your sugar down to a very low level, in addition to just blocking glutamate, like he thinks it can cure most all cancers, because he's like, cancers have a problem with like fermentation, that or different in their fermentation. Like, so if you just rob it of all of its fuel, that's where this theory comes of don't eat glucose.
Right.
That only works if you truly go pure keto, super high keto, and dismantle the other thing that the cancer will still eat, which is glutamate or some other amino acids. But there is the theory to it that makes sense, because that is the fuel, whereas cancers generally it's difficult for them to use ketones as an energy source. Right. They have no problem using glucose. And that's why people say that's where the cell studies come from. It's true. If you don't have circulating glucose at all, then cancers have a difficult time processing, energy sources.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Okay. So let's talk about, so you mentioned your podcast. On your podcast, I've heard you talking about like different types of, what's the word I'm looking for? Advancements in this field. And I'm wondering, do you see precision medicine and like using somebody's like specifics as a way of advancing treatment? Or what is your favorite or most recent advancement that you could talk about to the audience?
So when I said precision medicine, I meant that for even primary care. So I'm like, there are boutique places, and I have a bunch of, media, I guess social media, kind of this, like, it's obnoxious, but like a high school social media creator doctors are, like, we're all in WhatsApp groups and all this stuff. And I have some that like have these, I don't want to call them boutique, but they do that. They check your blood and they see what your enzymes are and what your normal level should be. And they tailor the medications based on what we know in science.
Yeah.
We're already doing that in cancer, like, fortunately, like, or they should be, is like where we look at the tumor and we see specifically what mutations it has or doesn't have. And now some of our therapies actually depend on what your inherited genetics are too. But to answer your question, this whole concept of precision and targeted therapy is just huge, because a lot of, in like lung cancer, for example, or even in breast cancer, HER2 positive, when we can target the very thing that makes that thing aggressive and terrible, instead of giving you a shotgun chemotherapy, which still works, but a shotgun cytotoxic chemo is what people are hearing right now. They're like, oh, that makes you lose your hair, this, that, and the other. Yes, it's a generalized poison that kills the fastest replicating cells without permanently killing yours. So yours recover, they take a hit, but the cancers that replicate really fast die. They just like burn up every time they replicate. That's why chemo still works so well.
Yeah.
Take that concept and say, hey, I'm going to give you something by a pill or an IV, and it's just going to go attack people that are wearing, this militia uniform. Now it's actually targeting the uniform. That's targeted precision therapy. That's why I can have a lung cancer patient with cancer everywhere, like where they lost 80, 90 pounds. It's in their bones, their liver, their lungs, and they have one mutation called EGFR. They take an oral pill. It's not traditional chemo. And all the cancers like disappeared 85% of the time, like about 6 to 8 weeks later, all the lung cancer.
Wow.
And it lasts for like 18 months or 20 months, like, and they have no cancer everywhere. And they would be, probably unlikely alive in 12 weeks. One of the problems is still in community America, there's about 15% of 20% of people that aren't even checked, especially if you're a Black American or minority. They don't check. I don't know why, but it qualifies and they don't. But the other thing that's huge is immune therapy. So we actually have like immune therapy in so many different cancer types now. Why? We talked about it. We keep talking about it. That's why this podcast is beautiful, because it keeps going full circle. Your immune system was doing what it do, right? Like for the social media term, is do what it do. And we're like, well, maybe we should look into that again. And we realized, oh, wow, that's how it escaped the immune system. It put up a bunch of stop signs. That's PD-1. Our normal cells have stop signs. Let's see if we can knock it off. And you get immune therapy, it knocks off the stop sign, and it's like that person's naked, or like the Harry Potter analogy I use. Like you take off that invisible cloak, and you all of a sudden see it, and you get these amazing potentially responses in so many cancer types now, because you've re-enabled your snipers or your bishops to do what they do. And we're figuring out what it was that made it get out of that sniper's eye. Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank, like laser eye thing.
Yeah.
And so that's where we're headed. So we're headed to doing immune therapy, re-enabling your immune system, hopefully getting away with less chemo because we're targeted. And then the key is, again, in a beautiful circle, the way that you talked about the testing is like, we just take a bunch of pictures in regular CTs and MRIs. But imagine that you had something that if the cancer is using this as an energy source and your normal cells don't, or they don't do it at a significant amount, now you're seeing light up within the cell. And now you know exactly where that is, far sooner than an average CAT scan, which takes 200 million cells in one place to see it.
Wow. That's amazing.
And troubling, right? It's like, oh, your scans are clear. But if you have 500,000 cells, it's like, we think it's clear because we can't see it.
Right.
And your face is like, whoa, that's bad.
Right?
Like, that's what a CAT scan is. Or 1 million or like 10 million. It's like, it's not enough. Yeah. You have to see it to a much higher degree to see the mass. Oh, it's 4 millimeters. And then we're trying to poke it and we can't, and all this problem.
Right.
Now we have something where all of a sudden, instead, it's like, it's if you're going to go to a gym, you have a bunch of people that are huge. Like if you poison the creatine or protein, it's like it may select for some other than others, right? I don't mean that morbidly, but that's the whole point. Is like, something is like more likely to uptake it and others aren't, and then we can attack it that way and see it.
It's like the I didn't even know about what you were saying with like the immunotherapy. Like I had no idea that existed. Like the idea of like these scans that can see one cell, like this is fascinating.
Yeah, hugely.
And like, it's just amazing, like what is possible if you even think like 10 years down the line or something like that.
Yeah.
Like,
how
much longer people could be like, it's really incredible. Like the work that you're doing, like, wow.
Well, I don't do any research. I just those are for the smart people. We just do it when it's proven and navigate as a medical oncologist.
It's amazing work. Like I'm fascinated by it all. I could literally talk to you for hours. My last question is kind of a question that I pose to all of our guests in a different way. You are a dedicated physician. You're a podcast host. You have a family. Like, tell us, how do you balance it? This is kind of like what I always call it is like the reason our podcast is called Balancing Chaos is because I work. I have my 2 boys. Like I'm trying to be a good wife. Like it's chaos, but it's a balancing act. So what's your one technique?
Oh, I'll be honest. And I don't know if people say this, but like I am not like, I don't balance. I know that, and I'll say that in the sense that like I used to work out a lot, can't work out as much anymore. I need to sleep more. I don't sleep much, right? Because I have like there's a business or 2 that I've started. But this is what I tell people is like, I don't think, I had a James Dean poster that said like, live as if you'll die tomorrow. No, dream as if you'll live forever, live as if you'll die today. And that's a little extreme. But I do think of my life in about a 3 to 6 month like interval, like because of all the debt,
But the work you do.
What's that? Yeah,
Because
because
of
the work I do. Exactly. So I'm like, is anything in my life like would I like change or am I just tolerating it, quote unquote, for the next, 6 months in general, I say. And that in itself is like to me, like the fulfillment and the balance. It's like I'm so humbled and privileged to be a father, to be a husband, to be a doctor of my patients, like all this stuff. And I'm putting out education that, yeah, I miss the days. I was just so, and I'm gonna get back to that. But I'm like, am I happy? Am I fulfilled? And even the things that seem annoying, like with the kids, like you're not getting ready, you're not whatever. I just imagine for a second, like, I just don't know that I'll have, like, for a second, do I not think like I don't take it for granted. And that presence can really change. It's the same way, again, full circle, like we talked about the stage 4 diagnosis. It's like, it's the same diagnosis, but the outlook's different. It's like, I'm just like, people that can't have kids, I'm like, even though my kids just like being just an absolute savage right now and not listening to me at all, I'm just like, but I have a kid. And I'm like, and it's him, and it's probably a little bit of me. And it's like, and it's amazing how much that switch can flip, and what our problems are also privileges. I'm like, I'm privileged to have this problem. Like, it's like, that's crazy. The things that stress me out of work, I'm like, I forget that I worked so hard to get into med school and residency and fellowship and thought I couldn't do it. And then did, and then missed birthdays. I'm like, this problem you can't just have overnight. And that's anyone listening. And I'm like, what a privilege.
Thank you. So like what I will tell you right now, so I've never been brought to tears on this podcast before. And I was just brought to tears because like, it is so literally so true. Like I have tears in my eyes because I was driving my kids to school this morning and like both of them were screaming. And like, it was just like one of those mornings that felt like absolute like chaos. I'll use the word again. And I literally in that moment shifted my perspective. And I was like, like some people don't have kids. Like, and like, I'm so lucky to have these 2 healthy boys. Like, what am I? So the fact that you like ended it like that, like there could not be anything better. What a beautiful perspective.
It's celestially ordained. It's reminding me too. Now I'm teary, but it's like you were gonna miss. You and I, Kelley, are gonna miss so badly our boys screaming in the car like that. Like when we're lonely, like we're just gonna be like, I just want them to be fighting about some stupid piece of putty and like this thing that's so ridiculous. And I'm just like, why? What does it matter? And then instead, I'm just like, I just want to get in it. Like, what is it? Tell me what you love about it that you need to right now. And it becomes fun. But I love that you said that, and that's it. It's just like almost any problem you have, if you look at it, through the right optic, you're like, man, I'm so lucky to have this, stressor.
I love it so much. This was literally one of my favorite conversations. And I do not say that on every podcast. So thank you so much for your time. I know you're a very busy man, so I really appreciate it. Tell our listeners where they can find you, where they can listen to you, all the things, please.
Yeah, no, this was huge. Again, now I'm all my emotional feels. So the Onc-Doc is like THE, Onc, ONC for oncologist, and doc. And I think that's on TikTok, Instagram, and then my podcast, which I'm like, talking about a lot of these things that we talked about today, but with like experts and Pulitzer Prize winners and all this stuff that I have no business talking to. It's called Target Cancer Podcast, and it's on YouTube and Spotify and whatever else. And then it's basically mostly it. And then my like first initial S is in Juneja. My last name md.com is my website, which eventually I got to do something with. But I just appreciate people's interest, your interest, like you nerding out with me. And I think we're all inherently nerdy, but we have to know that we're nerdy. Like for my middle school story, and you're all of those things, and you make it look cool. And I'm sure anyone listening is the same kind of people. So let's just keep on.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'll link everything in the show notes. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you in the next one.
I hope that you loved that episode and that you found some helpful tools and insights to help you heal and come back to the most vital version of yourself. If you did, please rate, review, and subscribe to our show. That's the best way to support us. You can follow me on Instagram at Wellness by Kelley and sign up now for the 7-day free trial of the WBK app and our health and hormones course through Labor Day. When you do, you'll get 20% off of the course and 10% off the annual membership. For the course, use the code BalancingChaos20, that's BALANCINGCHAOS20. And for the membership, use the code BalancingChaos, all one word. In our course, you'll get access to an emailed lab review, plus protocols that are built out to help you heal whatever hormonal imbalance you're struggling with. For our membership, you'll receive a library of content in our app with low-impact workouts, blood sugar balancing recipes, and mindfulness meditations, all designed to help you balance your hormones naturally and feel like your most beautiful, joyful, and vital self. Thanks so much for joining me. See you in the next episode.